So why are films shot so dark these days? Why is the cinematography so underlit? Why does it feel like you
Mm,
have to squint to see everything? Do you
mhm.
guys experience this phenomenon
Yes,
in
but
your media today?
I want to go off the path and then come back to the path real quick.
All right, well
Uh,
make it a short path.
it's in the same vein, so it's on the
All
same
right.
path. Just you don't know if it's a path. Whatever. Um, Instagram, Peter McKinnon, has done this for a long time with his photos and with his videos being very dark, saturated, bringing the
Mm,
contrast up and everything. And he almost set this because of Peter McKinnon. There's been this wave of filmmakers through YouTube or through Instagram that have started doing this. And it kind of follows right around the same vein with this, with like movies and film. It kind of is having the same look. Don't you agree?
Mm,
I think you can
It's
get
just
I
not
think what the
movies.
trend is that you can get a lot of interesting contrast and things with darker environments
Hmm.
where you have the opportunity to use lighting the way that you want to use lighting, exactly how you want to use the lighting. And that's why Peter's stuff looks good is because he
right.
can manipulate the lighting however he wants.
Because of him,
And
though, people have done
movie
it. People are doing it now.
well, especially in the YouTube game of,
Yeah.
people who are just getting into it and or have maybe been into it for a long time and are
Mhm.
figuring out that, oh, if I make this darker, I can make it more concentrated. I can control my lighting better. Whereas, in TV and movies, I think a lot of people have understood this, and that's why for a lot of years we've had these, every once in a while you get a darker movie like
Mhm.
um what's the one? Seven?
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Seven's a
very
darker
dark.
movie.
That's
And
very dark.
we've gotten a lot of these over the years where it's like, how do we control the lighting
Right.
essentially? And they're usually dramatic movies.
Yeah, yeah. So really have 4 main reasons that's kind of publicly general consensus, as
Mm,
well as, I threw one in there because I kind of little insider baseball, I kind of know the industry a little bit, all right?
Just
A
tiny
little
bit.
yeah.
bit based on my personal experience, and also kinda know what's going on somewhat. So, I would say the 4 we can dive into each of these. The 4 big reasons is film versus digital, all right? Dynamic range in cameras, lack of color grading, whether by laziness, creative choice, or just, incompetence, I guess.
Mhm.
And then more minimal lighting because of
Mm,
cameras. So let's dive into each of those. First, film versus digital. And in order to really understand this, I want to pull up a waveform monitor. All right.
Okay, nerd.
I'm not nerdy. All right. So the basic understanding of a waveform monitor, okay, is you have 0 at the bottom and you have 100 at the top. Does
Ugh.
that make sense? Would you stop? We have to get through this so we can understand it
Okay,
clearly.
real quickly. Help.
100 is the brightest an image is before it just goes white, before it just peaks out, it's lost, right?
Mhm.
0 is the darkest an image is before the shadows are just lost. It's just black, all
mhm,
right? So when you have a waveform monitor, a solid waveform monitor should be within 0 and 100, all right? If it's past that, like if it's farther up higher than 100 or below 0, then your whites and blacks are blown out. There's
Mhm.
no image, there's no information there, all right? Shadows and highlights. So this waveform monitor is actually from a shot from
Mm.
The Godfather, okay? So if you notice those like 4, you can see it. It's built like the same way you look at an image, it shows where the light is, right? So you can see as the lights go up, the green waveform
mhm,
signal goes up. Those 4 dots at the top, those are the lights behind his head. That's
Yeah,
the
it's a
brightest things in
backlight.
the image. And then you have his skin tone kinda landing in the middle with multiple shadows in there, and then
mhm.
the things around him kinda dip into shadow, so they reach down to 0, right? when you understand this, this helps you also understand the choices creatively behind when someone's filming something on set, because they also are looking at a waveform monitor. They are trying to see how much exposure we have and specifics about cameras. So
Mhm.
with this knowledge of, highlights and shadows, digital and film are opposite to each other. Would you believe
Mm,
that?
Yeah.
So when you are filming with film, people tend to overexpose because film can retain highlights and bring them back. So if you go to color film, if you shot too bright, you can bring it down, and the highlights, it protects them more. So it doesn't reach
interesting.
beyond 100 and they're just completely blown out. However, with film, you cannot protect shadows. So once you drop something into shadow, like they did here with with The Godfather, that information is lost for the most part. When something hits zero when you're filming it, can't pull that back. All right, it's not enough data inside film. Digital, it's opposite. If you blow something out, you lost it. If it's too white, too
Ah,
bright, you lost
it's
it.
gone.
However, it retains informations in shadows a lot.
So you can brighten
Um,
it up.
you can
Mm.
brighten it up. And so here is the real decision making. I look at, examples of Greg Fraser where he was doing the Batman.
Mhm.
Everything's very, and even with the Godfather here. What is my other example? Do I have another example? Oh, I also wanted to explain this, but I'll get
Flat
to that.
versus color grading.
Flat versus color. I'll get to that in a second. And it's kind of what Wyatt was touching on earlier. Choosing pockets of light instead of like, these sitcoms or whatever, where it's just like bunch of colors, everything's bright, everything's there,
Mhm.
right? In a film, you have highlights and shadows, and how are you using lighting and different levels of lighting to motivate what's important in the frame, right? To motivate where your eyes need to go. That whole
Yeah.
section next to, the dawn there on this image, that's not necessary, and it's actually more interesting to create this big, dark, negative space next to
Mhm.
him.
Mhm.
So it's like really bringing attention to where you need to be looking, and like there's multiple pockets of shadows and lights. So that's kind of like with Greg Fraser shooting the Batman, same concept. Pockets, like revealing Batman with a little pop of light on his shoulder,
Mhm.
and everything else is really dark. So, um, but to understand how they film stuff digitally is log footage. It is flat versus expanded. So, like, this is a shot. The waveform monitor for this looks like this. All right.
Wow.
So, when you shoot in camera, so it should be on the left side, with digital cameras, you can crush the signal to protect the shadows and highlights.
Mhm.
That allows you to expand it in color grading and not lose that information. You have more
Yeah,
control
yeah.
over it, right? So that's kind of like what they did here. So with all this information, why do movies shoot so dark today? If we analyze all that, what do you think creatively they're choosing? Here's something from Hitchcock.
I
His
think
highlights are there and his shadows are gone.
so. I think there is a dramatic thing with shadows that people are doing where I think it's they're using shadows and darkness to emphasize specific things, maybe emotions or something,
Mm.
Right.
and that's kind of how they've done it. We were talking about this last night where there's things you can do. I don't remember exactly the specific thing, but you can do things easy, and then you can do things that are slightly that
Hard.
harder,
Yeah.
and it doesn't bring the product to make it better. It's
Mhm.
but there is kind of this romantic um element to doing it the harder way, and uh it, to kind of
We were talking about pipes versus cigars. So it's
yeah.
end product. It's end product
Well,
versus
I specifically said rolling a cigarette. There's
yeah,
something
yeah,
romantic about taking the time to roll that cigarette, and
yeah.
it
Mhm.
just gives character to what you're smoking. We were watching something, and I think I know we were watching a Western,
Yeah,
Quigley
quickly
Down
down
Under, and the
under
guy was
because he
rolling
was rolling
cigarettes.
his cigarettes.
Yeah, and so we were talking about that, and I said, do like rolling it. There's something to that other than just buying the actual thing. So bring
Well,
it back to your film.
you said the like it's the difference between cigars and a pipe where you'd rather smoke a cigar over a pipe because with the pipe you got to carry around all the stuff, you've got to pack the pipe. um and for some people it's about that habit of getting out the tin, packing the pipe. It's which exactly what you're saying is those extra steps aren't necessary because we have cigars,
Yes.
right? Which lasts as long as a pipe, if not longer. You don't have to go through the extra steps of packing the pipe, keeping the pipe lit
You just
as
clip
you're
it and light it.
Yeah.
yeah, you just yeah, it's go. It's the same with cigarettes of smoking a cigarette versus rolling one up, and the process isn't necessary anymore, but clearly people like that process,
Um,
especially in movies.
and even like Oppenheimer, Christopher Nolan, how he
Mhm.
used film to do the thing when he didn't have to.
He didn't
He
have to. He's rolling his own cigarettes here.
Yes. I
Well,
mean,
he also says that it is truly the highest definition possible like
eh,
in history to see an image, right? And that's true. If you blow Oppenheimer up on a humongous screen, it's going to
Right.
look better than if you blew up onto a humongous screen of something that was shot digitally. Like it just will,
But I
right?
mean, we have cameras that
yeah,
honestly
can shoot
do the same
10K
they
right
do the
now.
same thing without 11 miles of footage.
Yeah,
You're right. You're right.
They do basically
But
the same thing.
you can't project a 12. You can, but theaters do not regularly have the ability to project a 12K image onto a screen, right? Because
Yeah.
that takes a lot of power.
And
But they can project a 70 millimeter piece of film.
mhm.
They
But
can
I
do
don't
that.
think your average moviegoer isn't thinking about that, isn't
hmm
necessarily thinking about that resolution because resolution is so high, it's so great nowadays
Hmm.
that he's packing his own pipe here.
Right.
Um,
yes.
where the process probably and is longer and the end result is only maybe slightly better.
I don't think
Okay.
he's packing his own pipe here. I
Look,
think
we gotta get off of this because this isn't like the main reason. Because
okay,
Right,
we also
right.
have
We're talking
and
about
examples
color
like
lighting.
grading.
Yeah, we're talking about
look,
lighting, color
we
grading.
also have examples like Seven that you brought up that is on film and still
Mm.
dark, right?
Yes.
It's really the choice of how bright do you want your highlights to be and how dark do you want your
Because
shadows to be?
I noticed in Oppenheimer where there were a lot of stuff that was very clear,
Hmm.
very nice, very beautiful, very purposefully, especially a lot of the black and white stuff, which you
Right.
would think, going back in history, black and white, they used shadows a lot
Hmm.
to make a point, to make
That's why I pulled up a shot of Hitchcock
yeah,
here, one of his
to
pieces.
really emphasize certain emotions and actions, whereas in Oppenheimer, the black and white they don't use shadows that much unless they're in a car. Um,
Hmm.
Everything else is super bright, super crisp, super
Right.
clear. But there are moments where Oppenheimer's talking to somebody, and he's just like his face almost is entirely dark
In shadow.
where he's him. I want to say it's him and Matt Damon, or him and his friend that he meets at the beginning of the movie, where they're just sitting, they're talking, they're leaning in, and their
Mhm.
faces are completely black. You can't see their emotions. You can
Hmm.
it's almost barely even like silhouette acting
Right.
because you can
Right.
still see part of their face, and you're like, is this bad? Is this bad lighting? But
Uh,
no, it's purposeful.
It's
Mhm.
purposeful, and that's and if you throw out all the other things that, like Hoyt van Hoytema had behind
Hmm.
lighting his scene that way, you also just get to the core reason was this is a timepiece. We want the lighting to look the way it would in this room if
Hmm.
these two guys are sitting in this position.
Yeah.
Um, so with
That's how
all that
all the
said,
lighting felt in Oppenheimer.
whether it comes to film, whether it comes to digital, the hard thing about film is that you can't really measure on the field with a waveform
Mhm.
monitor, like we just looked at, but you can now with digital. You also have to consider, not that they weren't doing this back in the day, but you also have to consider that, what is this? One of the most egregious examples of dark film is, the right here. So the
Yeah.
Battle at Winterfell that everyone talks about. If you're watching the Battle of Winterfell on a relatively large, like you guys' I don't know, 70-inch flat screen, whatever you
I don't
got,
have a 70-inch flat screen.
65, but
65-inch flat screen. It's nighttime. There's no lights on in the house.
mhm.
I'd be willing to bet that episode looks pretty good. You know
It
what I
do be
mean?
looking good.
Yeah, with all the lights out on that
Right.
TV, it would probably look really good.
And here's the
But
thing: they edit it accordingly. They edit it in an
but
editing suite that is
that's
dark,
not
and that's
that's not how you should watch that's not how you
episode.
should watch anything.
You should watch it on
You
your
shouldn't
phone.
have to you shouldn't have to turn out all of your lights and put it on a very large screen to be able to watch something.
Well, you also have to think that
That's egregious,
You
well,
in
should
my
you
opinion.
compensate for
can watch it
both. For
still.
both.
Look, if you're in a dark room, you can still see what's happening on your
Mhm.
phone. And the cool I'm not a big hater on this episode because if you create an environment where you can see the image, you don't have a big old like
Mhm.
window reflecting on your screen or something like that. You can see all the action. You can see it. It's clear. The point of of that episode is like it's dark out here and it's ominous and it's
Mhm.
chaotic and it's dangerous. The darkness puts you in that frame of mind that the actors are feeling. I mean, when those
It's
Dothraki ride out into the field and disappear, like you're meant to notice that they
Yeah,
disappear in
but we're not
darkness.
just talking about different shades of shadows and dark and light. We're talking about this image I'm looking at right now that you have pulled up. Um, all looks the same color to me,
Oh yeah,
and it
you got
shouldn't.
the
It
warm
shouldn't.
lights and you got
There were too many instances in hallways and in rooms and down in the crypt and moments like that that just all the colors blend together. That's bad, especially if you're filming something dark. If all the colors are blending together into sort of a darkish gray, that's not what people want to watch.
all right, well, talking of blending things together, let's
Mm,
use an example of film in a Steven Spielberg movie of how they used to do like Dark Knight scenes, like what he's done. If you
Yeah.
mhm.
look at this, you see shadows
Which
on the
means it
ground
was
Yes,
of the car, which
filmed during the
means you
day.
have no, it means they have a big freaking light.
big light
Big light to light the whole scene.
to make it almost feel like you
It's
know.
almost like day for night, but it's controlled light. It's
Well,
not you don't have
it's
to deal with the sun.
this is also we're in Jurassic Park where there might be big floodlights
Right.
at the top of those gates.
Exactly. So it's contextual, but you see this is a really dark scene,
Mhm,
but
Yeah.
everything like color-wise does blend into each other like you're saying, but you still
mhm,
see the dinosaur. You still see all the details. And
Yeah.
it's a part of it is because it's Steven's style. He doesn't want to miss anything in darkness. He set up this elaborate scene.
mhm.
He wants to see everything and he's shooting on film, so you don't want to underexpose too much, right? Because you'll lose it if you underexpose too much. So there's a lot of thoughts behind this, but then you go to like the first picture I brought up with, Keira Knightley on the Boston Strangler. Let me go back to that one. So, and we see this a lot. We saw it in like Ozarks. We see it in a lot of Greg Fraser's work. The
Mhm.
Creator that's coming out. I did a video on that. That the motivation behind a lot of this kind of lighting is two things: modern digital cameras, their ISO capabilities. If you don't know what that means, it's basically the sensitivity the camera, the lens, or not the lens, the sensor has to light
Mhm.
is really powerful. Now the problem with it is traditionally if you bump up the ISO too high, like to 1,000 or 2,000, you start seeing grain. You start seeing noise in the
Yeah.
shadows, right? their cameras are getting so good that you can bump your ISO up really high. Like we're talking 20,000, right?
Mhm.
Mm.
14,000, 10,000, and it's not introducing a lot of noise. Filmmakers like Greg Fraser like this because there's also a big movement where they want to introduce a little bit of light. They don't want all these big Steven Spielberg lighting setups. You know what I mean? You got to light the whole scene with these big, huge RE floodlights.
Yeah.
What they want is minimal. They literally want to have a single light that is not even shooting at Keira Knightley right here. They want
Mm.
it bouncing off of a white card, and a little bit of light is coming back and hitting
Yeah,
them in
a
the
little
face.
bit.
You know, a little bit. With a regular camera, you can't see that, but with these new cameras, these RE cameras, these like the video I did, the Sony camera, the Sony FX3,
Mm.
you can bump it up and it can see so much light in a really dark environment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can paint your image in a new way that hasn't been done before. So everything like when you're watching it on your phone or your iPad or during the day on your TV, it feels dark. But if you turn off the lights, you can start to see the artist's work. And that's why I don't hate on the Battle of Winterfell episode, because if you pay attention, if you go through the effort, you start to see the artist's work. If you're just casually watching, then yeah, you're going to have problems. But you can see
I
the
look,
artist's work.
I agree with extra steps. Maybe one I look, I agree with maybe doing some things to be able to truly appreciate what the artist is doing. You know,
Mhm.
big IMAX screen to watch Oppenheimer, or a big screen or something with surround sound and everything, or maybe a darker room to watch something. But again, uh, we're bringing it back. I don't want to roll my own cigarettes,
Yeah.
right? I want to be able to sit down, put something on the TV, and be able to see what I'm watching.
Yeah, bro, you want
You
everything to
know,
look like King of the Hill.
no, I don't. I'm okay with closing the blinds so that the glare isn't hitting my TV, but I
Right.
think I think a normally lit living room should be able to perfectly display whatever you're
You're
watching.
watching.
I
Yeah.
don't want and I don't want to sit down. I don't know. Nobody else has seen this movie except me. Alien versus Predator Requiem is perhaps the most egregious example of lighting ever in a movie. The movie is so dark. You
Mhm.
can
Yeah.
barely see what's happening, and there's some really cool stuff. It's a terrible movie, but there's some really cool Predator alien stuff in that movie, and it is the last scene is absolutely one of the most egregious things because it's happening outside. I want to say there's rain, and you can barely see the monsters, and a lot of the monsters are practical effects, which is really cool.
All
Yeah.
right, I got a question then. When you do look at someone's work like the Batman,
Mm.
that is very low lit, extremely low lit,
Mhm.
right? You put that on a waveform monitor, everything, even the highlights are down in like the 40s. You know what I mean?
But
So it's
but
like, but do you appreciate
you
that?
can
Because
watch that. You can watch that on a TV with normal lighting.
sort of,
You
you're gonna miss
can.
a lot. You're gonna miss
You're
a
not.
lot.
I don't think you're not missing a lot
The
because
lighting is very delicate in the
because
Batman.
your silhouettes are purposeful. Batman's supposed to be very silhouetted, where there's maybe only light cast on his jaw or the side of his head or things like that. That's
Mhm.
very purposeful, and it doesn't feel too dark.
Yeah, I think when I see it, it feels dark in the same way that when I watch Seven, it feels dark. And to me, when I see stuff, like this movie, The Boston Strangler, or I see episodes like the Battle at Winterfell,
Mm,
it doesn't offend me the way. And maybe it's because I look at it and I imagine what it would be like color grading,
Mhm.
in an editing suite, and be like, this is an appropriate choice. Because I mean, even on shows that are more indie, like The Chosen, there's a lot of dark scenes on The Chosen, and they're trying to get that natural light look, right?
Mhm.
But
mhm.
there's a lot of dark scenes. Uh,
But
and
you
so,
notice when people make an effort for you to see the movie, like Nope. They did a lot of day for night
Yes.
filming, but made a big effort to make sure that you can see everything that's happening out in that desert because they wanted to make it look like it's natural moonlight, and it
mhm,
Yeah.
works so well. You
Yes,
can
they did a good
see
job
everything
for
that's
that.
happening, and it's awesome. I
yeah.
appreciate that more for that artistry of making sure that the viewer can see what's happening over um trying to make something artistic
Well,
that
look,
in the end the viewer can't watch unless they're
they're in the right
unless they're
environment.
in the right environment.
Now, I'll be honest, I'm opposite, man. It's not that
We're
I don't
frogs. We're
appreciate
not
no's.
amphibians. We don't have to be in the right environment
Look,
to
So I think
breathe.
let me cut the difference and say it depends on what you're watching, and there's a time and place for both. There's a
there
time and
is.
place
So
for
why are
what
we
And
so
Wyatt
maybe
wants.
there is, and
egregious?
There's a
maybe,
time and
but
place
I, I'm
for what
I'm saying
Joseph
I
wants.
would. There's pros and cons to the effort that you're putting in to for your viewers, right?
Yeah.
And I think maybe just me personally, I appreciate when they put the effort in to make sure I can see something.
Yeah.
Make sure that I'm seeing what I'm supposed to see.
Mhm.
Now, and you know what I appreciate is the willingness to go the extra mile to paint with light and colors and not just blanket statement for visual
Yeah.
ability. Now,
But
that's what
we
Nope
but
does. That's what Nope
but we
is. There's no
it's
painting with light. It's literally just we want to see with action, we want to see what's going on, and we have this CG monster we have to put in the sky.
Yeah, but the
So,
thing with Nope is that it's in an open, bright environment.
yeah, you can't
Whereas
paint with
we
night
do
with
have examples of painting with light. With Pinocchio, is very it's the lighting is very, very intentional, and you can still see everything that's happening. My issue is scenes like the Battle of Winterfell. The darkness bleeds together. The darkness cannot bleed together for
Yeah.
me. There
Okay.
has to be silhouettes with very, very intentional lighting. If it's
Okay.
going to be dark, there needs to be more intentional lighting than what's going on here in this
Alright.
picture specifically.
And it looks like the big light source for this is the backlight.
Mhm.
I'm okay with his face being darker because we know who it is.
And we know what the facial expression he's making
If we know
clearly.
if his face, the dark side of his face was even darker and we couldn't see his facial features, but
You're
the
cool with
other
that?
side, the bright side
Was
was
a
a
little
little bit
brighter?
brighter on the side of his head, that's more interesting
Mhm.
than
Hey,
all of it just
perhaps.
being gray dark altogether.
And you know, to answer this question, why are things shot so darkly nowadays? It's not that they are. It's just that there is like a new approach and there are new styles that are
There's
coming
new
onto the
methods,
scene. New
definitely.
methods with the technology,
I mean,
but
I watched some behind the scenes for Nope, and the technology is incredible what they're
mhm.
doing and what we have the ability to do.
Yeah,
I
with cameras, with lighting, with the
Yeah.
amount of lights, with how digital versus film
Mhm.
interacts with your image. Um, yeah, a lot of times, like Hitchcock used his highlights were really bright at the top, like close to
Mhm.
100, and his shadows were close to 0, right?
Very dark. Yeah,
So
because he
there
was
wasn't
using a lot of
utilizing
storytelling with Yeah,
they weren't
that's
utilizing the
cool.
whole spectrum. So
I'm looking forward to what we see more with this kinda stuff. I think we get
absolutely.
a glimpse of some interesting stuff happening in the art world with, like, Pinocchio and stuff, but I'm more interested to see, I love that kind of film noir look of,
Like Nightmare Alley.
a thin like a thin line on somebody's face, and then the rest is silhouette.
Mhm.
Uh, Man, it's cool to me, and I wanna see more of that.